Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Tuesday night Bible study. We'll be in 2 Samuel chapter 14 and maybe chapter 15, depends on how well we do. But we finished up with chapter 13 last week. And if you remember, chapter 11 was when David committed his terrible sin. Chapter 12 was when Nathan convicted him of it, and he repented and got restored. And then chapter 13 was when Ammon raped his sister, half sister Tamar, and then Absalom killed Ammon and got things going, fulfilling the prophecy about the sword should not depart out of the house of David. You know, God had promised David a great house, but because of David's sin, God said the sword will not depart out of your house. And so this is what we're seeing now, is the sword at work in David's house. Now, David became very angry because of what Ammon did. But what could he say? He was guilty himself. And then he became very angry in what Absalom did by killing Ammon. What could he say? He did the same thing. And you know, there's some things we need to consider. You know, Ammon was David's oldest son. Absalom was his third. The second son was a boy named Chileab or Daniel, who was the son of Abigail. Now, Abigail was probably Jewish. She was called a Carmelitist, but she was probably Jewish, whereas the other two mothers were both heathen. They were both from, they were foreign wives, both of Ammon and Absalom. Now, we don't know what happened to Abigail's son. We don't know. We know absolutely nothing about him except his name. And so we have to conclude that either he died at a very young age, or possibly he was mentally retarded and did not qualify to be the king on the throne. Now, when we consider why did Absalom kill Ammon? Was it just because of Tamar? Or was it because Ammon was the first one qualified for the throne? And with Ammon out of the way and Chileab out of the way, who would be next in line for the throne? That would be Absalom. And see, it comes back to being, you know, I want the throne. Now, when David looked at his children, he didn't want any of those first children to be. And then the fourth son of David would be Adonijah. And David didn't see him for being qualified to be king either. And so that's why he told Bathsheba that Solomon would be the next king. And Solomon definitely was qualified because he was a wise, godly man. Solomon had a tremendous sin problem, just like his dad David did, and just like we do. And so, big debate when I was in Bible school. Is Solomon going to be in heaven? Yeah, I think Solomon's going to be in heaven. because what sin did Solomon commit that was not forgivable? And did Solomon repent of all of his sins?
Yes.
When you read the book of Ecclesiastes,
At the end, he says,
yeah. And you get the impression, when Solomon looked back over his life and says, you know what? I have made a mess of my life. I have ruined my life. And what is the end of the matter?
It is to seek God.
Yeah. Fear God and
God, yes.
And what was the other part of it? I forget now. To fear God and keep his commandments or something.
Yes.
But, so anyway, I really believe that in the end of his life, Solomon did repent. And
he said it was the beginning too, the fear of God.
The fear of God is the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. And of course, then the book of Proverbs is wisdom from one end to the other.
Yes, that's right. Sonia read it. It says, fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all. So that will bring everyone into judgment. Yeah, that's what he says.
Yeah, King James says this is the whole duty of man. So yeah. And that's what God has put us here for. To reverence him and to acknowledge who he is and to worship him. And fear of God means, hey, because of who he is and who I am, I should obey him. And you got to understand the relationship between a slave and his master. A slave's master tells him when to get up and when to go to bed. You know where I learned that? When I went to boot camp.
Yeah.
They told me when I got up. They told me when I went to bed. They told me when I could take a shower. They even told me when I could go to the bathroom. And they told me when I couldn't go. Yeah. And sometimes we were pretty miserable. And they told us when we could eat. They told us when we could run. They told us when we could do push-ups. They told us we could do pull-ups. For 3 months, our life was totally under control of that sergeant. And Eddie knows about it. He was there. And I know after I first got there, I thought, what am I doing here? I have surrendered all of my liberties. And that was exactly my thoughts. I've given up my rights. I've given up my rights as an American citizen. And I felt like I wasn't a citizen anymore for 3 months. And then after 3 months, well, they started making up to me again. Anyway, but that's the kind of relation God wants from us. He wants us to fear him, does not be afraid of him, but it means to have tremendous respect for him. And that's the whole that reverential awe. And does fear mean fear? Yes, it does. Why? Because he has the right to squash us at any moment. Yeah. And he has the right to cast us into hell. What did Jesus say? Don't fear him who can kill your body. Fear him who can cast your soul into hell forever. Yeah. Who's he talking about? He's talking about God. God is the only one who could cast us into hell forever. He says, Jesus says, that's the one you fear. Don't fear somebody if they beat you up and even kill you, like poor old Charlie Clark. Don't be afraid of those guys because the reward comes afterwards, right? I appreciated, we listened to his wife, Etika, and a tremendous speech for a woman who just lost her husband. And she says, I know he heard, well done, good and faithful servant. I wish she had said the rest of it, enter into the joy of your Lord. She didn't say that part. She just says, well done, thou good and faithful servant. And he was. But anyway, David looked at his sons and he thought, you know what? None of these sons are really qualified to be the next king. And he didn't think that Ammon was qualified, Absalom wasn't qualified, and Adonijah wasn't qualified. And then, of course, David had a bunch of other sons that we don't know who they are and don't know anything about them. But anyway, he saw Solomon, the son of his illegal wife, and the woman that shouldn't have been his wife, and saw him as being qualified. Because evidently Bathsheba was a good woman. You got to understand, back in those days, when a man wanted a woman, he usually got her whether she wanted to or not. And what could you say to your king? If your king come along and says, hey, come on, I want you. What could she say? He's the king. Yeah. And so it was unfortunate for her. But anyway, she ended up making the best of it. And I guess she eventually became David's favorite wife. Okay, let's go ahead with the passage in chapter 14. And this chapter is about bringing Absalom back to Jerusalem. If you remember the end of chapter 13, Absalom fled. Why did he flee? Because by all rights, he should have been stoned. He killed his brother. And under the Jewish law, he should be taken out and stoned. And so, by the way, David should have also been taken out and stoned, right? And but he got mercy. Well, he repented, yeah. And God forgave him. And now, by the way, I don't think you'll find anywhere that Absalom repented. I don't see him repenting anywhere. Now, he wanted to come back and be restored back to Jerusalem, but I can't see that he ever repented and was sorry for killing his brother. Again, I think that he had other motives for killing his brother besides avenging Tamar. He wanted to be the king, and he couldn't be king as long as Ammon was alive. That is going by the traditional way of passing the kingship down to the oldest son. Okay, verse 1. Now Joab, the son of Zeruiah, perceived that the king's heart was toward Absalom. Now, David loved his son. I think he loved Ammon as well. And he loved Absalom. In spite of their terrible sins, he loved them. And Joab, you know, after Absalom is killed, how did David react? How did David react after they killed Absalom? Oh, my son, Absalom. Oh, my son, Absalom. Oh, that it were me. And Joab says, come on, David, get alive. This guy's thrown you off of the throne, and you're going to sit here and mourn over him? And by the way, Joab was the one who killed him. Now, Joab is the one who's going to step in and have him restored back to Jerusalem. And then I think after he does, I believe Joab has second thoughts about it, thinking, you know what? I shouldn't have brought this guy back. He's not going to be a good king. And we're going to see that Absalom was very arrogant, very self-centered, very selfish. And I think Joab started to see that in him and started to regret his having insisted on bringing him back to Jerusalem. Okay, verse 2. And Joab sent to Tekoa and fetched thence a wise woman and said unto her, I pray thee, feign thyself to be a mourner, and put on now mourning apparel, and anoint thou thyself with oil, and be as a woman that hath a long time mourned for the dead. And come to the king, and speak on this matter unto him. So Joab put the words in her mouth. Now Joab is setting the king up with this woman. Hey, come on in here. Joab is putting this woman up to set David up to bring Absalom back to Jerusalem. Verse 4. And when the woman of Tekoa spake to the king, she fell on her face to the ground. There's reverential law, and did obeisance, and said, Help, O king. And the king saith unto her, What aileth thee? And she answered, I am indeed a widow woman, and mine husband is dead. And thy handmaid had 2 sons. Now, you got to remember, this is a made-up story. Joab made it up. Mm-hmm. And thy handmaid had 2 sons, and they 2 strove together in the field. Sounds like Cain and Abel, doesn't it? In the field, and there was none to part them, but the one smote the other and slew him. Still sounds like Cain and Abel. That's where Joab got the idea. Verse 7. And behold, the whole family is risen against thine handmaid, and they said, Deliver him that smote his brother, that we may kill him for the life of his brother whom he slew. And we will destroy the heir also, and so they shall quench my coal which is left, and shall not leave to my husband neither name nor remainder upon the earth. And so this is the story that she's telling. I've got 2 sons. One of them killed the other one, and now the law demands that we kill my only surviving son. Then I won't have any sons. Now, that means she's not going to get a Social Security check. What was Social Security back in that day? It was your children. Oh. It was your children. Your children are responsible to take care of you when you got old. Nowadays, what the kids say, let the government take care of them. And, you know, we even try to get the government to pay for their nursing home. We don't want to do any of it. And I remember there are certain qualifications. Both of my parents died in nursing homes. And now the church that they were involved in paid quite a bit of their nursing home expense, but the family paid the rest of it. I think the government may have paid a little bit, but we didn't depend that much on the government. And but anyway, nowadays it's everybody, let the government take care of it. No, mom and dad, no, let the government take care of you. I want my money for myself. And that's the problem. When kids, by God's method, kids were intended to take care of their parents when their parents got old. Did you hear that, Scott? Scott, are you listening?
Probably.
You'll probably get a text in a minute.
Maybe. Quit talking about me.
Verse 8. And the king said unto the woman, Go to thine house, and I will give charge concerning thee. And the woman Tekoa said unto the king, My lord, O king, the iniquity be on me and on my father's house, and the king and his throne be guiltless. And the king said, Whosoever saith aught unto thee, bring him to me, and he shall not touch thee anymore. So basically, the king is saying, I've pardoned him. Just like Joe Biden. How many people he pardoned before he left the office? A couple of thousand?
Yeah, quite a few.
And they're trying to decide now that those pardons were not legitimate. And, all of his family members, he gave them a pardon. And he gave people a pardon that didn't even ask for one.
Yeah.
And anyway, he went way too far, and they're claiming he didn't even sign it. It was all done with an auto pen, so it's not legitimate.
I said he probably thought they needed one.
Yeah, well, a lot of his family members definitely needed it, and because they got very rich off of his time in the office. Then said she, I pray thee, let the king remember the Lord thy God, that thou wouldest not suffer the revengers of blood to destroy any more, lest they destroy my son. And he said, As the Lord liveth, there shall not one hair of thy son fall to the earth. Then the woman said, Let thine handmaid, I pray thee, speak one word unto my Lord. And the king, to the king, and he said, Say on. Now this is when the king begin to figure out who she is. And the woman said, Wherefore then here that hast thou thought such a thing against the people of God? For the king doth speak this thing as one which is faulty, in that the king doth not fetch home again his banished. And so now she's saying, Hey, you're willing to pardon my son, how about pardoning yours? And and this is going to hit David just as hard as Nathan's accusation after he had his sin with Bathsheba. And suddenly David, oh my goodness, talking about me. And so then he says, Oh yeah, I'm willing to forgive your son, and I'm not willing to forgive mine. And what does the Bible say about forgiveness? Folks, I hope you know this verse. Ephesians 4:32. Take a moment and look at that verse. Ephesians 4:32. This is a verse every Christian should know. Because one of the greatest attributes that Jesus wants us to have is the gift of forgiving. Okay, you want to read it?
And be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you.
All right, hear that? You forgive because Jesus forgave you. If Jesus forgave you, then you should forgive others. Suppose your neighbor drove his car through your flower bed, and you became very angry, and I'll never forgive you for messing up my flower bed. Well, Jesus forgave you. How about you forgiving your neighbor? And that's what it all boils down to. If Jesus forgave you, then we should also forgive others.
My mom would
Forget the red ants that are going through.
Marita says she can't forgive the red ants.
I asked.
Oh, you-
to forgive them?
I had a big old red ant bite me on the inside of my knee. Been 3 years ago now. I still got the spot there. It left a big old spot on the side of my
Well,
leg.
and I'm grateful they haven't been me.
But there's some of them big old red ants are really powerful. But
I heard redheads.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I thought, yeah.
Red ants.
but think about it.
Okay.
How many people in your life are you slow to forgive? Now, I've told this before, but when I was teaching the youth group down at the Alamo Community Church, I was teaching on forgiveness one night. Now, Julie Alanis, or Julie Mason, was in that class, and she was maybe about 20 at that time. And she had a little sister that was probably maybe 18. And anyway, I was kind of annoyed at her because she wasn't paying any attention. she was sitting there scribbling and writing. And I was really kind of annoyed because she wasn't paying any attention to the class. But anyway, it went on, and then she interrupted me. She says, I have something. And she held it up. It's a piece of paper with about 20 names on it. And she says, those are people I can't forgive.
Wow.
So she got convicted that night that she needed to go back and forgive those people. Why? Who does it hurt not to forgive somebody?
A person that
The person that won't forgive.
That's right, of course.
And, a person says, well, I'm not going to forgive him because he ran through my flower bed. Well, he says, hey, no big deal. So he goes on. He goes fishing, has a big time, and you're sitting there angry because he ran through your flower bed. And so who's hurting? The person who refuses to forgive.
That's right.
And so we find a lot of happiness and joy when we are able to forgive somebody for the wrong they do to us. And one of the hardest things for Christians to learn to do, well, I think the hardest thing is to learn humility. But probably the second hardest is learning how to forgive others. Because
You
it's
carried that a long time. Each one.
it's just not in our nature, is it, to be forgiven? Because our culture has taught us otherwise. And that's our teaching should come from Jesus, not from our culture. Yes, sir?
Amen.
So do we go to the point of forgiving those who have murdered?
Yes, sir. Even goes to the point of forgiving those who have murdered. And if Hitler had repented, God would have forgiven him.
Of course, I'm no longer a Catholic, but I remember John Paul when he got shot and went to go see the guy that shot him in prison and forgave him. I mean, I'm not saying, of course, that anything about the religion, but what he did was good.
Was admirable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've heard of cases where people that have been terribly wronged by some family member being killed, and then another member of that family would go to the prison to visit them, and we've forgiven you.
Well, the lady cop that went into the wrong apartment, thinking it was hers, and shot the.
Oh, yeah.
And I forgot who it was, a relative of the. Forgave her there in court.
Okay. How about that?
Yeah. It's tough.
Yes.
Yeah, it is tough.
Who
I just said it's tough.
Oh, it is. It's
Yeah,
tough.
it is.
It's tough. And especially forgiving those we love. I could never forgive you for what you did. I could never forgive you because you put a big dent inside of my brand new car. Or this car we got now. Well, we had about a week, and Vashti put a little crease in the side of the fender. She come in, oh, that feels so bad.
It was there.
I says, it's only a car. Cars are intended to have dents.
But not within the first month. Not
Yeah,
my
talk to
wife.
Talk to Nancy about that.
And if Rudy's out there, he would tell you his pet name for my pickup is the Pinata, because it's got a lot of dents in it.
The
It's
bottom line, cars are cars, or truck, whatever.
Yeah.
They're only, God gives us so we can use them for work, for church, whatever. It's a blessing, but
Yeah. that
sometimes
is
we get too
true.
much into.
I love
Yeah.
when he say that. He say, well, I went to the thing just to wash the car. He said,
Oh.
it's, how do you say, scratchy.
It's all
scratching.
scratching and
Uh-huh.
scratching and.
It doesn't matter. Oh, I can't even wash it, so I still do.
But and sometimes we have an accident and you say, oh my goodness, look at my car. Hey, it's only a car. Just be glad nobody got hurt.
Yeah.
I don't know if Ishmael's out there. One of the things I fondly remember about his first wife, Cynthia, Ishmael bought a little mini bike and he brought it home, and Cynthia wanted to try it out. And anyway, she took off and she wrecked it. And he come running out there and he says, oh, my mini bike. And she says, how about me? And you think about that. He was concerned about the mini bike. He forgot to be concerned about his wife. And see, we should be concerned about what's really interesting. And that's people.
What's important?
Huh? That's what's important. That's what's important. Where did we get to? We did verse 10. Then said she, I pray thee, let the king remember the Lord thy God, that thou wouldest not suffer. Oh no, we did that one. Oh, we got down to.
He said speak 13, I think.
We're ready to 14.
Yes.
And we must needs die, and we are as water spilt on the ground, which cannot be gathered up again. Neither doth God respect any person, yet doth he devise means that his banished be not expelled from him. And she said, yes, there is such a thing as death, but it is not God's desire to banish people from him forever. And so David is going to be convicted. Yes, I need to bring my son back, and I need to forgive him. But by the way, when David brings his son back, does he forgive him? No. Does he restore him? No. Joab has to come through again and get after him about this. And then finally, David restores him. But I think David sees Absalom's character.
Yeah.
And it's very obvious. He's very arrogant, very full of himself.
Yeah.
And David's saying that's not a good character for a king. But he's still his son. He should still be able to forgive him. And basically, David needed to read Ephesians 4:32.
So we could have forgiven him, but I mean, tell him, messenger, I forgive you, but that's it. You say all of that.
Well, and some people do that. Okay, you're forgiven, but don't come back anymore.
I mean, it's as long as you forgive him, I believe from your heart, because it's like the husband is beating on the wife, and then they get divorced, and then she forgives him. I mean, it used to happen back in the 70s when they would beat him up, and then she would go and pay the bail, so she would come and drop the charges.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why now the state takes over, right? They if the wife drops the charges, the state will pick them up, and because they got to charge him. What happened? Absalom never really paid for his thing, and I think David. You think if David would have known what he wanted to do, because I believe all that was he wanted the throne. He didn't care about that.
Well, yeah.
He wanted the throne. You think if David, would have known that for sure, for a fact, that you would have let him come back? I don't think so. It was a threat to him.
Right. And you got to remember that both Ammon and Absalom were sons of foreign women, women who were not of the Jewish faith. What does the Bible say about marrying? Not to do it. And so they were really definitely born dead in trespasses and sin.
Were their mothers child, or do you remember?
Yeah, they're listed in chapter 2, I believe it is, 2 verse 2 or 3 or something like that. It lists those first few sons and who their mothers are. And Abigail at that time Abigail and King Saul's daughter were the two wives that were Jewish. And the other two wives, Absalom's mother and Ammon's mother, were both heathen. Absalom's mother was of Gath, and Gath was very wicked people.
The other Philistines, no?
Yeah. Well, yeah, they would have been probably Philistines, which would be modern day Gaza, right? Yeah. But so these were not desirable characteristics, and unfortunately, a lot of the parents shows up in the children. By the way, it usually tells us who the new king is going to be. It tells us who their mother is. Why?
Because he ran through the mother.
Because the mother had a lot to do with the character of that king.
Yeah, this one spent years with him.
Huh?
She spent all those girls
Yes.
years with him.
And the mother more so than the father, because she spends time with them, and they have a tendency to adopt her nature. Now, sometimes the boys will adopt their father's nature because they want to drink and smoke and curse and play poker and do all those things. And
or fight for their country and fight for their family. Yeah, look at the good things too.
Yeah, look at the positive side, right? and a lot of people have been married because I didn't get drafted. I volunteered to go in the military. Now, a lot of the guys I was in with were drafted, but the draft was still in place when I went in. But were you drafted or did you volunteer?
Volunteer.
Yeah,
Sean,
I volunteered. Yeah.
Matthew question, well, but he also goes to that, he not preach much at all about Christian marrying another Christian. A true born again Christian marrying another born again Christian. We see that marrying anybody but a Christian, for some reason, girls, Christian girls marry pagans and Christian boys marry pagans, and we see that a lot. And I don't see the church really, or their parents encouraging their kids to marry Christians, I
Because
always told the girls, one of the reasons I had them go to Macedonia Christian Academy, so I told Sonia so they could meet a Christian boy, not for them to get married at 17, 18, but so they can, and then I was hoping for them to go to a Christian college, but crazy that a Christian college, but that's the point that I think that it's not really underscored or, really emphasized nowadays by the parents.
I'm a strong believer in interfaith marriages, and if both peoples are unbeliever, I have no problem with doing the wedding.
The problem is that.
But if one is and one isn't, then I have a problem. But I remember being kind of pushed into doing one time, which I really wasn't happy about, and then it ended up in divorce. Not too long after that. And by the way, I've had too many of my marriages turn into divorce, and it really hurts when you realize, I married this couple in good faith, and then it turned into divorce, including my own son. And so it's unfortunate that it happens. But what are we blaming on, our culture? I guess so. But anyway.
But it's not necessarily if they go to a Christian college or they're running around with a Christian man that they're not also going to end up in a divorce. It's sad, but I mean, it gives you higher odds that it may end up being good. But nowadays, it doesn't necessarily mean.
When I was in Bible school, there was a young man that he was 1 year behind me, and boy, everybody just oohed and awed about what a spiritual giant this young man was. Tall, good-looking kid, and he led prayer groups and prayer circles and so forth, and Bible studies, and man, everybody just oohed and awed about. Not too long after he graduated Bible school, he got sent to prison for murder.
Wow.
And I thought, how did this happen?
So much for the good guy.
Yeah, so much for all that goody stuff, and it didn't hold up. So because it wasn't real, I guess. Either that or he was really mad at somebody. But anyway, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And when I look at, there was several people I went to Bible school with that are really involved in the ministry, but I would say 80% of them went right back to being just regular citizens. And now most of them are still involved in church. Some of them aren't, but just a very small percentage really went into the ministry, which I thought was kind of disappointing. When you go to Bible school, we have the idea that you're there to prepare to really serve the Lord. But some people just go to Bible school just to learn Bible, and that's it. That's all. They don't want to get involved.
A lot of churches are run like corporations.
True.
And
Well, yes,
and
that's
there's
unfortunate.
Where the pastor feels that he's like the CEO, and of course,
And he treats the congregation like they're
their
employees.
like their customers.
Yeah.
And when Christ came, he said the greatest would be the ones that serve the others. So I think that a lot of the way even the church is structured, modern day churches need a lot of work.
I read something in my devotions this morning, and I thought this is really a neat thought. Churches have a tendency to draw certain kinds of people. Some great big churches draw a lot of businessmen and businesswomen.
Mm-hmm.
Little country churches draw more common people like us that all work for a living and have a small savings account, small checking account, and we would call ourselves as probably as poor, although I don't really think I'm poor. Rudy says I'm rich, but
Rich in the Lord.
Rudy started calling me the rich gringo back when I first met him, and that's because I was trying to live the life of Christ before him. And anyway, he started calling me the rich gringo, and it was not had to do with didn't have to do anything to do with money.
The same thing with missions. As we were telling people we were going to the field, we didn't ask them for money, but we asked them to pray.
Yes.
But the ones that responded, and we never got in the huge churches, was the smaller churches. They've stuck with us, praying for us, give us a little bit. The smaller churches have love like we have in our church.
Yes.
And that's why you're
Well, 'cause
able
they
to
know
help
each
others
other.
A lot of the big churches are too busy building bigger churches.
in the program.
Yeah, bigger programs.
I've also noticed that the pastors of those biggest churches don't have a lot of humility.
Well, they become like celebrities.
Yeah, they're it's all about them, and so that's the whole thing is the money,
About Christ.
and it's not about Christ. You're right.
Yeah. All right. Back to.
Anyway,
Sorry.
all right, Vashti, let's get back to the Bible study. Okay, Vashti, what verse are we on?
I'm trying to figure it out. 16, 17.
Verse 15.
50. Okay.
Now therefore that I am come to speak of this thing unto my lord the king, it is because the people have made me afraid, and thy handmaid said, I will now speak unto the king. It may be the king will perform the request of his handmaid. For the king will hear to deliver his handmaid out of the hand of the man that would destroy me and my son together out of the inheritance of God. Now see, if they killed this other son she had, there would be no heirs to her husband's property. Then thy handmaid said, the word of my lord the king shall now be comfortable, for as an angel of God, so is my lord the king to discern good and bad. Therefore the Lord thy God will be with thee. And the king answered and said to the woman, now see, king's getting suspicious now. Then the king answered and said to the woman, hide not from me, I pray thee, the thing that I shall ask thee. And the woman said, let my lord the king now speak. And the king said, is not the hand of Joab with thee in all this? Now, you got to remember, Joab was pretty much David's right-hand man. He was the general of his army. And Joab really stood up for the king in most things. But there at the very last, he disappointed the king, and the king said, he said, don't let him go to the grave in peace. But David recognized that Joab was behind this story this woman was telling. He began to realize this story is not a real story, but it's one that Joab has put out there. Okay.
As I so live.
And he put all these words out of the mouth of thine handmaid to fetch about this form of speech hath thy servant Joab done this thing, and my Lord is wise according to the wisdom of an angel of God to know all things that are in the earth. Now, why would David think that Joab was behind this? At this time, Joab was certain that Absalom would be the next king. And so for him to ascend to the throne, he was going to have to be restored and really need to be forgiven. And David seemed to be really reluctant to do it. Now, Absalom is going to come back to Jerusalem, and David's going to have nothing to do with him. Mm-hmm. And Joab, like I say, Joab at this time thought, I need to get David. Well, Joab was probably looking out for himself too. I really want to be the general of the army for David's son Absalom. Now, I don't know how old Joab was at this time, but he's been there the whole 40 years that David's been king. So, if he was 20 years old when David became king, then he's now 60.
You didn't know when to retire.
And yeah, that's right. In the military, usually by the time you're 60, it's time for you to get out because you're just not able to handle it anymore. I know in the Marine Corps, after you reach 40, they don't require you to do all the things they require of you before. Before you're 40, man, you have to go 3 miles in a certain amount of time with a pack and a rifle, and you got to be able to do so many push-ups and so many pull-ups and so many squat jumps, and you got to be able to run so fast, and you got to do all this. But once you turn 40, you're excused from all this. Why? Because at 40, you really begin to not have all the energy it needs to do this thing. And at 40, they don't really ask the guys to go into battle. They put them in administrative places and let them use their experience to help direct others' lives. But I never made it to 40, so I was all right. Verse 21. And the king said unto Joab, behold, now I have done this thing. Go therefore, bring the young man Absalom again. So David says, all right, okay, Joab, you're right. Go get the young man and bring him back. Now again, David seemed to really love this boy. After all, he was his son. And remember how much David loved the baby that died? Goodness gracious, he was just, mourning and praying for that child. And the Old Testament Jews seem to love their children more than we do today. Should I say that? A lot of parents just really take their kids for granted and don't really pour their lives into them like they should. We as parents really need to pour our life into our children. Otherwise, they're going to go the way of the world.
It's fun to see young fathers and mothers and how they're taking care of their babies.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know, Chad. You hear some great stories like this, but then you hear some really bad stories in other parts of the world.
Well, yeah. And, it doesn't always work out. But we're talking about the law of averages, okay? Where are we at?
22.
Verse 22. And Joab fell to the ground on his face and bowed himself and thanked the king. And Joab said, today thy servant knoweth that I have found grace in thy sight, my lord, O king, in that the king hath fulfilled the request of his servant. And that was Joab's desire to bring Absalom back and start preparing Absalom to be the next king. So Joab arose and went to Geshur and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. And the king said, let him turn to his own house. Let him not see my face. So Absalom returned to his own house and saw not the king's face.
John, do you think that there was something in stake for Joab?
Do you think what now?
Joab, was there something that he was going to gain by bringing back Absalom? What is it?
Well, yeah, he was going to gain a nice position in Absalom's administration.
Well, he already had a good position, no? He was
but
general.
that's with David.
But
Absalom could come along and say, no, I want this young whippersnapper over here, 21 years old. I want him to be my general.
Was he carrying his position, you think?
And so it's the same thing with people buddying up to the president when he's campaigning.
Yeah.
Why? Because they hope to have a nice place in the administration. And, and generally people feel like they owe that person something and they will give them a nice job and on a good taxpayer's paycheck.
Well, don't you think it was kind of wrong on the part of David? If he had brought Absalom back and then worked with him and tried to get him to be the man he wanted him to be, instead of just sending him off and saying.
And that was a bad mistake. You're right. He should have brought him back and says, Absalom, I love you. I forgive you what you've done. And I want to start preparing you, training you to be the next king. But I think David had already seen the character of Absalom with his arrogancy and his selfishness and so forth. And we're going to see that in the next chapter when Absalom starts preparing himself to. By the way, how was Absalom going to ascend to the throne? He was going to kick David off of it.
Yeah.
That's how much he loved his father. So, if obviously David loved his son a whole lot more than his son loved his father. And we see the awful things that Absalom did to his father with his concubines and was throwing him off the throne and all that he did. And that shows you that Absalom had absolutely no respect for his father.
Well, some of that, but all that was people of David's sin. The sword.
Well, it was the prophesied the sword.
That was his consequence. That was his consequence for David.
Mm-hmm.
But what was the consequence for against death? Absalom for what he did. So his brother, fled and I guess his death because he overthrew his dad, the anointed one. David was the anointed from God. So
Oh, anyway, but David could have worked with him a little bit and tried to help him, but for reasons of his own, David chose not to.
When in this timeline did God tell David, you're not going to build the temple, but this is how you're going to do it, how it's going to be done, and you can provide for it?
Well, we get that in the last part. The last part of
about Solomon would be his.
yeah, we get that in the last part of 2 Samuel when
That's still
when he starts gathering money and stuff for it. And I believe that David had the plans all drawn up and everything. All Solomon had to do was build it. And but David had the plans. David had the materials. Maybe not all of them, but most of them. All Solomon had to do was get the workers and get them going. And
but David was told that Solomon would be.
yeah, David was told that Solomon would be the one that would build the temple. And, yeah.
So do we know more or less their ages? I mean, David's age at this time and Absalom?
Well,
Their ages more or less?
it would seem that David became king probably in his early 20s, and so he's in his 60s now. He's been king for 40 years. Well, not quite yet, but by the time his reign's over, he'll be in his 60s.
Yeah.
And and David said in Psalms that we're given 70 years, and if by good luck we have 80. But
We're living on good luck.
yeah, we're living on borrowed time, aren't we?
So then would you say that Absalom was what, 20? He's 20, 25 or something? Or what age more than
Probably.
Absalom?
Okay, Absalom was born back when David was in Hebron. All three of those boys, Absalom, well, four of them, Absalom, Chileab, Ammon, Chileab, Absalom, and Adonijah were all born while David was in Hebron.
Okay.
And that would be the first 7 years of his reign.
Oh, okay.
So at this time, yeah, Absalom was probably, well, I'd say 35 years old anyway. So he's not no kid.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, he's older than that.
Because you got to remember, David's been in Jerusalem for what, 43 years? Well, he's in Jerusalem for 43 years before he dies. And so I would guess this is probably within the last 10 years of David's life. So I believe we could safely say he was in his 30s somewhere.
Well, if he's in his 30s, it's kind of hard to start turning a man and changing a man when they get to
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. They get pretty sot in their ways, don't they? And
I was
that's,
thinking he was younger, like
Yeah.
in his early 20s or.
well, we really need to pay attention to people's ages.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
remember that when he was born, and he was born in that first 7 years of David's kingship in Hebron. And so we're looking at him being in his 30s somewhere.
Oh,
So he's no young kid.
yeah.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
But he was really stuck on himself.
Well, he was really stuck on himself, and that's going to be evident in the next chapter.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right. Thanks, son.
25.
Okay, where we're at now,
Ready for
25?
25.
25?
25. But in all Israel, there was none to be so much praised as Absalom. Now, the people loved him. He was evidently a good-looking kid, very attractive physically, and in his appearance and in his form and everything. He probably was in good physical condition. And like a lot of modern day boys, he had long hair. And that long hair was going to get him in serious trouble. So when your son wants to grow long hair, tell him about Absalom. But anyway, it says, so much praise as Absalom for his beauty. From the sole of his foot, even to the crown of his head, there was no blemish in him. So physically speaking, he was Mr. Macho or Mr.
Mr. America.
Mr. America. Maybe he was Arnold Schwarzenegger or something. Who knows?
And that might be causing part of the problem.
It becomes a part of the problem. He's too full of himself.
Right.
It's going to show up in the next chapter that he's too full of himself. And that's why I think David thinks he's not qualified to be king. It's real important for leaders to have humility. this concerns me about our president. He talks too much about the things that he's done. And he repeats them over and over and over again. I've done this. I've done this. If I had been president, this wouldn't have happened. That wouldn't have happened. I would rather he didn't press that quite so hard. Let somebody else tell his accomplishments. And that's the way it should be. Let somebody else praise you, not yourself.
But he didn't grow up in a Christian home like I did.
Well, yes, that does make a difference, right? Verse 26. And when he polled his head, that is when he cut his hair. And when he polled his head, for it was at every year's end that he polled it, because the hair was heavy on him. Therefore he polled it. He weighed the hair of his head 200 shekels after the king's weight. How much is 200 shekels weigh?
Here it says 4 pounds.
4 pounds. That's a lot of hair.
Yeah.
How much does your hair weigh?
I don't know.
Boy, mine probably don't weigh 6 ounces.
No, not even 2 ounces.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Well, 'cause it's thin.
Oh, now we're not talking about my brain. We're talking about my hair. But to have 4 pounds of hair, that's a lot of hair. And then, like I say, the hair is going to get him into serious trouble. And unto Absalom there were born 3 sons and 1 daughter, whose name was Tamar. Now he had a half sister named Tamar, and he had a daughter named Tamar. She was a woman of fair countenance. So Absalom dwelt 2 full years in Jerusalem and saw not the king's face. So Absalom has been back 2 years, and the king has absolutely avoided it. Now, does that sound like a father and son relationship? Not a healthy one. No. Not a healthy one. I can't look forward to seeing my boys every time we get a chance to go see them, and I just enjoy seeing my sons again. And the rest of you feel the same way. It's just nothing like having children, and we as parents, I'm sure, probably love our children sometimes more than they love us, because they're still building their lives. We've built our life. Now we're looking back to just enjoying the fruits of our labor. And that way we can put more love and stuff into our relationships with our children than our children can, because
Then we divide it with the grandkids and the great.
well,
Yeah.
yes. How many great grandkids do you have?
A dozen.
A dozen. Well, my goodness.
And no, those are the grandkids. The great grandkids are 8.
8. Okay.
3 more coming.
That's about.
And we had a baker's dozen grandkids. That'd be 13. And then we've had 11 great grandkids, right?
I think so.
And I'm really proud of all of them. But I couldn't tell you the names of my great grandkids. I remember one of them's name is Elliot, and I forget his brother's name. But I just, I just don't. I can't remember those. I can't even remember the grandkids, much less the great grandkids. But I do remember my sons,
There you go.
and I remember my wife.
Thank you.
As long as she remembers me.
You better, John.
Therefore Absalom sent for Joab to have sent him to the king, but he would not come to him. And when he sent again the second time, he would not come. Now, why is Joab now acting like David? Why is he refusing to respond to Absalom?
He's figuring out what kind of person.
Because Joab is having second thoughts about that boy. Joab is seeing him now for what he really is. And he's seeing him as being vain, arrogant, self-focused, and he's thinking, these are not the qualities of Israel, of king, that Israel needs.
John, do you think that all of this was Absalom's plan? And not Joel? Like when he was in exile, don't you think maybe he sent messengers or some letter, whatever, to Joel and plan all this?
Well, he may have. He may have.
What it seems like
He may have sent a message and asked Joab,
manipulator.
speak to my father and give me permission to come home. Why didn't he come home? Because under the law, he was under sentence of death, to be stoned. and he should have been stoned for killing his brother. And so that's why he didn't come home. So he's got to be forgiven and restored before he can dare come home. He's got to have the presidential pardon.
I mean, that also causes a problem because you've got a man that killed his brother, and that's the law is that he should be killed. And now he's going to eventually become king. How can a king then look on somebody in his kingdom and say you're going to be killed because you killed somebody when?
And see, David couldn't do that either because he had Uriah killed.
Exactly the same thing.
Yeah. So, so anyway, so
It causes a problem.
be sure your sins will find you out.
They can say, "Do as I say, not as I do."
Yeah, right. I've heard that one before.
So, but in a way, weren't the kings above the law? In a way.
Well, they
Not before
were,
God.
they were,
but not before God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but before man.
Before
man.
man. I mean, but they were not.
Well, Hitler
We're gonna run-
could kill whoever he wanted to and get away with it.
Stalin as well. All these things they-
Yeah, Solomon
but
killed
of course they don't
anybody
go-
that threatened him. Solomon killed him.
Yeah, of course they don't go on. They don't believe in God.
Yeah. So anyway, kings were slightly above the law, and there's lots of people think that Trump thinks he's above the law too. I'm not so sure that I agree with that.
Yeah.
He seems to me like he's really trying to uphold the law, but a lot of people say no, he's above the law, and that's because they don't want the law held up, and especially the laws on immigration. Okay, verse 30. Therefore he said unto his servants, see, Joab's field is near mine, and he hath barley there. Go and set it on fire. And Absalom's servant set the field on fire. That'll get his attention. Then Joab arose and came to Absalom unto his house and said unto him, wherefore have thy servants set my field on fire? So now he finally makes an audience with Joab. And Absalom answered Joab, behold, I send unto thee, saying, come hither that I may send thee to the king to say, wherefore am I come from Geshur? It had been good for me to have been there still. Now therefore let me see the king's face, and if there be any iniquity in me, let him kill me. And so basically Absalom is saying, you know what? I've been back here 2 years. If the king's not going to set me back, then go ahead and destroy me, because life's not worth living like this. Now I don't think Absalom was really serious about that.
Oh, no.
And yeah, that was just his way of making his point.
Manipulating.
Yes. So Joab came to the king and told him, and when he had called for Absalom, he came to the king and bowed himself on his face to the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom. Now, when he kissed him, did that say he forgave him? Did he kiss him? When he kissed him, did he say he restored him? And we don't really know David's part in this matter, but it really wasn't with Absalom as much as it should have been. David was really focusing his mind on Solomon. Now, we believe Solomon was 30 years old when he became king. And so Absalom would have been older than Solomon by about 10 years probably. So when Solomon became king, Absalom would have been close to 40 years old, in his late 30s anyway. And so anyway, when we pay attention to ages, we start to pick some things. Oh my, I didn't realize that they were that old. Oh my goodness, we only got 2 minutes. No sense starting on chapter 15. I titled this next chapter, The Cursed Sword, Absalom's Coup and David's Flight. So this is when Absalom says, I'm going to take the king. David's not going to give it to me, so I'm going to take it. Now, Absalom may have known, and Adonijah may have known, that David's intention was to give the throne to Solomon. They very well could have known that. And they resented it. So Absalom thought, well, if I'm going to be king, I'm going to have to just take it. And once I get on the throne, then Solomon nor David can do anything about it. And so that was, this shows you how much Absalom loved his father. I'm going to kick him off the throne. I'm going to kick him out of town. and then I'm going to do terrible things with his women. And
And I think he was thinking about that long before when he was trying to come back.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
said, I've got to get back in the kingdom to even have a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably so.
and
Yeah, because if David would have died when he was in exile, they probably would have had Solomon as the king, no?
well, let's see.
When he was in exile, or maybe Absalom. Or remember when after Solomon, Rehoboam and Jeroboam, Jeroboam was exiled, right? After Solomon died, he came back, and remember he reigned the northern kingdom. Jeroboam and Solomon's son, Rehoboam, ruled the southern side,
So King
the southern kingdom.
and
But
Jeroboam.
he came back when he heard the Solomon, because Solomon,
Yeah.
had him in exile.
Yeah.
I wonder if Absalom would have done the same thing.
Seemed like there was
Civil War.
two adversaries. There's two adversaries to Solomon, and Jeroboam was one of them. I forget who the other guy was, but they were totally opposed to Solomon. And then, of course, Jeroboam eventually became the ruler of the northern tribe. So,
Yeah.
any comments or observations?
Pretty
Anybody out there? Rudy, Ishmael, whoever all is out there.
Nobody identified it.
Nobody identified themselves.
Four of them. Four
Oh.
different ones.
Well, we're glad y'all joined us. Hope you got something out of it,
Joey said nice hair shot.
huh?
Joey's, oops. She said nice hair.
Joyce.
Oh, it don't weigh 4 pounds.
Nice hair.
No, I see her. That's funny.
Okay, well let's be dismissed. Father, we thank you that we could be here tonight, and Lord, just consider the life of King David and the problems that he had, and realize, Lord, that after he committed his sin with Bathsheba, his kingdom was never as strong as it was before, and that was a result of his sin. Even though, Lord, you forgave him and you restored him, and yet, Lord, the consequences of his sin was with him, and that showed up in his family and all the problems that they had as different ones struggled to take over the throne after David. Now, Lord, we thank you for what we've seen tonight, and pray, Lord, we make application to our personal lives with it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
And I read a fantastic quotation this morning in my devotions, and that devotion was, how did it go now? When someone is killed at an early age,
You guys.
they are not forgotten.
Good.